All right, so let me get started. We have a lot to get through today. There is a chance that I might end up making this like a two-parter for next week, because sometimes people get it super quick. Sometimes you need an extra session. So we'll just kind of see, and I'll gauge from all of you guys at the end if you need it. But let me pull up my deck and we can get started that way. All right, you guys can all see my screen. We're good. Okay, so Compass Tools, collections for sellers. I'm Kate, if you don't know that yet. Once again, follow me on Instagram, connect with me there if you have any questions. A lot of you guys actually have been doing that and asking me really great questions in there. I've been getting back to as many of you guys as possible, but that is absolutely the way, much easier for me to see it that way instead of text-wise. So popping into collections, and I kind of want to get a feel from you guys as to like what you use it for, so we'll get into that. Overall, collections allow us to collaborate and communicate with our clients on listings in one place. That's the essence of a collection. So what kind of prompted this for me, and some of you guys may have heard me talk about this with sellers before and how I do all of this, but I use collections in like 5 or 6 different ways. Once I realized how beneficial it was to really be able to communicate with so many different people, it was referral agents that I was able to put in there when they sent me a client. It was mothers and fathers and sisters, anybody who wanted to kind of see what was going on in the search and who was important to my clients, I was able to put in there. And it helped me field kind of like all these questions in like one place instead of having to be in 10 different group chats and then an email chain here and a voicemail here. I just put it all in one place, and I set that expectation really early on for the client. That's where I'm going to be. And this also helps me get people on to all of the Compass tech very quickly, because I make sure that they know if you want to go and search on Zillow, Redfin, blah, blah, whatever all these websites are, that's totally fine and it's up to you. However, I will not be there. So if you want me and you want my comments on listings, I'll be in collections. And that has gotten people to really quickly move over to that. Takes a little bit longer for others, but for the most part, that's like my pitch, essentially, like how I convert them over. So I get asked that sometimes. Why are collections important? If you guys don't already use them, you don't already know, they create a 24, for me, these are like the things that are most important. So they create a 24/7 system that is working for me in the background. So what I mean by that is if you set these up correctly, it can look as though they're your only client and you're consistently just waiting for that perfect house to come on, or you're waiting to see that comp that just came on the market for your sellers, and it'll send it to them. You obviously have to make that time block, go in, push them through if you don't have them on an automatic. But it's really nice to be able to know that even just getting that notification that something just came on, I could be doing something totally different. I didn't have to go in and search and actively have to have that be pulled in. I also didn't have to go into the MLS and have to have all these emails for the different, search portals that we used to set up on there. Much easier to use. Like I said before, it allows you to keep all parties involved in one place. So it promotes clear communication from the start. That was something that I felt like I was struggling with at the beginning. So this has cleared that up for me as well. I also feel like in comments, just the way that collections are, everything at Compass reminds me of like an Apple product. So people don't feel like they want to write paragraphs and paragraphs in a collection as much as they would in a text or anything. They try to keep it pretty clear and concise. So it's like one sentence here, one sentence there, which I also has felt like, I don't know, I just feel like my clients are a little bit more succinct with what they're asking on the house as opposed to going down a whole rabbit hole. And I have a toy poodle completely chewing my hand over here. If you hear her, that's what that is. User-friendly, looks clean, creates a calm and organized search experience for the client. Something that the MLS did not used to do. I used to be able to completely get my point across with it, but it was like outdated tech, and we have a pretty good MLS here. So what I love about this is like, it just promotes calmness. It's like black and white, very, very simple. So are we good on that? Great. So I want to hear from everyone. Feel free to unmute while I have this dog jumping on me. What does everybody use their collections for currently? You can unmute, you can type it in the chat, whatever you want to do.
Sending searches.
What was that?
I said just sending searches.
Okay. So like for buyers.
So.
Okay. Client Market Watch. I like that.
We use it for live CMA for some of our sellers, for most of our sellers.
There you go. Good. All right. Keep an eye on your farms. Great. Okay. So it does seem like people, as opposed to other times. So that's public collections, Pia. We can get into that in another session. But that's great. So I'm happy to see that people are starting to use these and see them, that there's more use than just this buyer search. Like, I feel like every time I do this every couple months, people are getting more and more comfortable with relying on the Compass collections. I know this is also a question. I'll just put it out there right now. Not every single MLS and the way it syndicates in there is perfect. I know that there's been hiccups along the way with that. We were like that like 3 years ago, but we just, they figured it out. We've been really, really good, spot on. We're never missing a listing when it comes in. So if you're in one of those markets, and I get you don't maybe want to trust the collection as a whole to pull everything, or if you have a lot of off markets, whatever that nuance is in your market, take that with a grain of salt going through the whole entire presentation today. Okay, cool. So I agree with everybody and what you do with them. So I'm going to show you how I do this with the sellers. For those of you who are not using collections, or even those of you who are using collections for your comps, how else are you sharing the comps with your sellers, whether that's on a pitch, afterwards, whatever it is? Okay, CMA. Okay, so like that printed one, like the 25-page thing, Ariana. Okay. So are a lot of us using, if we're not using a collection right now, is everybody else using the CMA tool through Compass? Does everybody know what the CMA tool is through Compass? Yes, yes, both. Okay. Cool. Okay, good. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of why I switched. I used to be a CMA person and bringing that huge booklet to people. And if you've heard this presentation, you know what I'm about to say. I have felt like when I go down to share it, I think probably like bullet point number 2 here is the biggest thing. Even though I'm like a coach and everyone's like, oh, Kate must be perfect on a pitch. I absolutely get flustered. And someone asked you a few questions right before you're going to go and share them. You didn't really feel like you nailed it. So now you're even more flustered during it. Then you look down and you're like, oh, shoot. Sorry, I can't curse on here, but oh, shoot. Now it's time to go and get these people to list at my price. And I would always feel like I was losing, like I would walk out. I'm like, why did you say that? Like, that was totally not what we walked in with my mom and I saying that, and it wouldn't work out. We wouldn't get the price we wanted, or the client just felt kind of confused. We didn't sound, not like I ever want to sound rehearsed, but I didn't really sound prepared, even though I was, and even though I knew what I was talking about. Has that ever happened to anybody else? Yeah. Okay. So sure. I got a sure from Robert. So that's what you want to think about. So being able to leave comments for yourself in these collections provides you this, you're basically, consider it speaker notes on a listing pitch. You don't have to forget, oh, which house, if you have 10 houses, let's say you're sharing, there's a lot of nuances to remember about each of those properties. And we all know what someone's going to say. You go and say one thing about one house, and then the seller says, oh, how could you even think that compares to my product, my house, my basement's completely different. That house floods. You don't know what you're talking about, whatever. So it's very important that you are able to go in through these listings, pick out like the 3 main things you want to talk about on each listing. Let's say you're sharing like 5 houses or 6 houses. And then when you get to the house in the collection, which I'll show you guys today, it's very clear about what you want to talk about. You're not saying like the most random fact about it. First, trust me, this is all stuff, because I'm an agent, I know we've all done. You're like, really? That's how you just open that up? Okay, Kate, like, woohoo, really good. You're definitely going to nail this. So being able to go into these comments and say, oh, that's great. Take a breath. That's where I was going with this one. And then you just go through those 3 main points, you move to the next house. And the seller doesn't know that these are speaker notes. He just thinks, or she just thinks, or whatever, that you're going in there and you were just prepared and you're leaving this with them. So when I used to do this with the CMA, and I'm sure a lot of you guys get like this, does anybody just have this booklet of the CMA? There's so much data in there. There's so much data that doesn't really apply, especially given a lot of our market conditions. So you just kind of leave it there for them to go through, and you don't even end up really going through a lot of it. Same thing with the digital CMA. It's a little overwhelming. And if I'm overwhelmed and I'm like labeled as the data girl here, I know everybody can be overwhelmed. There's a lot for them to go through and then pick on there. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there. I definitely agree that there's good graphs, and I don't mind anyone using it. I'll go in with both. But to be able to just go through that, let's say you're pitching for like an hour and have to go through every single data point, Now you just said something that doesn't really, that kind of contradicts, because not all the data is always going to flow exactly what's matching the market conditions. Now you've all gone on a tangent with the seller and it's become combative or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep very, very simple. I don't know if someone's, hold on, let me just mute Abby. So you want to be very concise with what data you're going into these pitches with, especially right now. And then the third one, keeps the client updated with the market after the property goes live. This has been very helpful for me. I know a ton of you guys have told me this before. This has been a game changer when you maybe do have something priced a little bit too high, or it didn't exactly meet what the market was dictating the price to be. And you need to go in and get these price changes or price adjustments after the fact, because you've been keeping them updated. So you're not just going in, listing's been on the market for 50 days. You've communicated it with them. You've told them it's overpriced, whatever. This has actually been a much easier way of doing it because they're getting these updates for you. So now instead of you telling them the information, you're both receiving it from the collection via Compass at the same exact time. So it takes that pressure off of you always being like that bearer of bad news. That's what I usually tell people. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Any questions so far? And like, please stop me. Any question is a great question to me. No. Okay, good. That means I'm doing a perfect job. Wonderful. Good job, Kate. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to share my platform and show you guys exactly how I set up one of these collections. And I'll leave comments just as I would if I was going into a pitch today. All right. Here we go. So just from the chat, if you guys could pop in here, does everybody feel comfortable, or have they taken one of my sessions where I show them how to set up a collection? Or do I need to go a little bit more in depth into that? A little more in depth. Okay, fine. So that's fine. So let's go through. And again, if we need to do a part 2 of this next week, totally fine with me. Let me just make you guys a little smaller so I can see my whole thing. So do we all know how to get here at least? You click on the magnifying glass right in the Compass platform. Great. Whew, okay. That's a win. Take the win when you can. Okay. Wonderful. So now we're in here. I also get this question a lot. Do I use Compass filters? Do I use my MLS filters? I like to use my MLS filters, but that's going to be very market dependent. I know people who you are able to do a lot more coming soon. You're able to do a lot more private exclusives. Westchester specifically is just very tough to deal with all of that. So we like to just use the MLS features. So you decide. You can go right here into preferences. HGAR is just like the name of my MLS. You could do that. You could do the Compass filters, like this is for like the city market, or you could just do Compass filters in general. So you decide what works best for you and play around with them. Why I like using the MLS feature is because it mimics exactly what I would see on the MLS. So I don't need to go in and say, where do I put in price? Where do I put in this? It's all right there. So my hand just kind of flows over it, just as I was used to doing on the MLS. Make sense? Okay. So let's see what I want to take. I feel like I've been using this one pretty specifically. So this is just me going through same exact thing you guys are going to do. We are a really, really big school district area. So I like to first filter out by that. I would maybe even consider filtering out by the elementary school within the district, because that kind of tells you different, will at least shorten your radius if there's nuances between where the elementary schools are located. I'm going to do single family. Not really anything else I need to do for this one. I'm going to do pending, and I'm going to do sold 180 days. Right now, I am finding I have to go back a little bit further. So you might want to do 360 days. Really depends on your market. I think I should be able to pull enough right from here. Price depends. You can leave blank. You can keep it there. I'd rather go a little bit more by square footage here. So I would do like 2,500 plus square feet, because the property that I have in mind is a 4-bedroom, 3,600 square foot colonial on about an acre in one of the elementary schools that's within this district. I'm not going to go as close as the elementary schools, but just to give you guys an idea. So to me, honestly, it depends on how well you know the market that you're searching in. If you want to make it more specific and you can't just think like, I know this district like the back of my hand, it's where I grew up, so I'll understand the nuances. You might want to get a little bit more specific and say 3+ bedrooms, whatever, 3+ baths, whatever you want to do. So you'll see here, I have like 72 results. So that might be a lot to go through and pick. So maybe you want to do like 800,000 and above, dropped it down. You could also do 800 to, like this one was listed for 1.1. Maybe you want to go up to like 1.5. Now I'm down to like 35 results. That seems like I can work through that and pick out like 6 ones to share with the seller. Is that helpful to like see how I did that? I mean, you guys all know how to pull your comps, but sometimes it's helpful. So then I'm just going to click on view listings, and I like to look at like the card view, which is much easier for me because I can see the house. I can see if it was on the market before, whatever. So this is actually the house that I'm talking about right here. This was our listing. So I'm going to ignore that one. And I'm just going to start going through these. So this would be one, if I was listing Pamela right now, I would say, okay, great. 140 Oscaletta just came on. I'm going to put that on. Bowway just went into contract. That was one that's been on the market for, like, I'm really going to like walk you guys through exactly what I think. This house was on the market before, relisted by one of my colleagues. This went in like 5 days. So I'm going to put that on because that shows that the market is moving in a very different way than it was 6 months ago when this house would not sell to anybody. I showed it. This is a very different area, so I'm not going to include that. This is like 20 minutes away from here, even though it's in the same school district. Very different area, sells very differently. Birch, maybe because it didn't really have a backyard, very similar to Pamela. And then, so this is like, I'll pick in a few. Autumn Ridge, same exact thing. It's a really good comp for it. So I'll start pulling in a few actives, a few pendings, just to show them how the market is moving. This one's right up on the cross street of there. So you guys see like how I'm thinking about this. Like I try to be very specific. I also suffer from absolute crippling anxiety, which I've told a lot of you guys before. So I like to do this thing where I wake up at 3 a.m. and think about what the seller's going to say to me on a pitch. I'm sure anybody else. And yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. I see a few hands. So it's crazy that we chose to be in this business. So at those 3 a.m. wake up calls, while I'm also grabbing a cookie and doing what else, I go and I think, okay, great. So if I included this house, he's going to say that about it because he's going to say his lot is very different. How could I ever even think to compare it to what he has? What a beautiful product. So that's how I try to pick these comps. I have worked with my coaching clients before, and pulling comps is like, it's a skill that I say you have to practice. And it comes from being able to know pretty much every house that's coming on the market. So one more reminder to go out and see it, even if you don't have a buyer. I tell people all the time, I make up buyers in my head. And I'm like, if I had this type of buyer looking for this, what would they want to go see? And then that's like why I go and see the property. So I can always say like, oh, maybe I didn't have a buyer for it, but I was able to see it and I know what the hiccups were about it and all of that. So that helps me a lot when you guys see how I leave my comments on there. So just going off a little bit on that. Let's see, let's pull some solds. Brundage is pretty close. I'll keep both of those because they move pretty quickly. Indian Hill, yes. Post office is a little bit different. Lily Pond, right in the village. I can't really take that one. And then let's take Five Ponds. That's fine because that was also on the market. It didn't really move. So are we good with like pulling comps? How I just thought through that. I'm left with like about 9 in there. Good. Okay. So I'm going to do up here is I'm going to do save search. And I'm going to actually take one more step back because this actually might be helpful. If you're going through and creating a CMA, this is also how I start by making that. So like that actual booklet I was talking about, you can just click create CMA here. I'm not going to do it, but you can just click CMA. And then those are going to be the listings that you just chose. I have been asked if I let the AI pick my properties for me. No, because of the reason I said before, crippling anxiety. No, I can't rely on somebody else to go and pick these for me. So I pick them and then you can go and make that. So you can make these simultaneously. So going back to making the collection, click on save search, click on collection for your clients. Don't do for yourself. Don't do anything for yourself. This is not a market watch. This is a collection. Click on that. Yes, Greta, it's a collection. Very good. And I'm going to do 9 Pamela Lane comps. Right here for this alert schedule, if you guys have seen me do these collections before, I really like to do review listings and hand pick. Sometimes I don't mind keeping it on an automatic, but it really depends on the client. I would say like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be doing review and hand pick because once again, just because it follows basically what automatic is, anything that follows the criteria that you just put in, especially if it's like a little bit more vague. If I pick, there were 35 listings here. I only chose to put 9 of them in there for very specific reasons. If you keep it on automatic, all 35 of those are going to be pushed to your client. And the, whatever, I can't do math, with 24, 20, 26, whatever it is, of those listings that probably would have like lost me the listing would have just been sent to my client. So this is why reviewing and hand picking is very important. It's basically what I just did. Results for notification, you can probably change this to daily, doesn't really matter. You don't have a client in here yet. This is like me if I was going to pitch something tomorrow. So you're not adding your client in beforehand. This is just for yourself. You'll share it with them on the collection, on the pitch in person, and then add them into it afterwards so that they can keep looking through the comps after you leave and whatever else they need to do. Could do again, daily, immediately, daily, doesn't really matter. Create the collection. So now I'm in here. I don't know why I didn't share them. I guess I did it wrong. So let me go back in. Oh, sorry. You actually have to do this and then click them. I should have done that before. So let me go back in and add some of these, the ones I liked. Can actually add Old Pond. We also sold that one. No Lily Pond. Yes to 5 ponds. Yes to Brundage. Yes to Indian Hill. So I go right up here and then I just do share with client. And then they all go into shared. So I have like 10 in there. What I would do is just go in and delete the rest of these. I like to keep this unshared very clean for myself so that I know I'm always pushing in everything that needs to be pushed in. So now you're left with 10 in here. Do we feel good so far? I can move on to how I leave the comments. It's just a standard collection. Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, the ones that weren't checked, you toggled up to unshared and then delete, and that's how you got rid of it.
Correct. Yep. And then they all moved into this trash right over here. So they don't go away for forever. Like if you wanted to add something back in, and then you can just do this and then share with client. So if you accidentally, it's not like they're gone. But I just like to keep this unshared as clean as possible so that when something new comes in there, I'm able to see it and I know that I haven't looked at it yet. All right. Okay. So now let's go through and let's leave some comments. It's like the favorite part. So here I would go in. We sold this house, so I know it pretty well, but you can also say that, like, we sold this back in December to a cash buyer, send. Like, keep these very, don't like build out a whole paragraph for yourself, because remember, you're calm, you're collected now. You're on the pitch, you're not that calm and collected all the time. So keep it segmented out. It's like, think of a few different talking points, like I was saying before. Lake rights. That's something this has that the other one did not. It's also 1,000 square feet smaller. Smaller than 9 Pamela. You guys can just, I'll take you through it. Very similar update wise. So I would just say fully renovated throughout. And then if you wanted to on here, you could go ahead and leave, what did it trade for? $350 a square foot. And then I would also go in and pop in what the rates were when we went into contract on the 22nd. You could just look that up. 10/22/22 contract date. Note rates were, anybody know what they were in October? What, maybe 6.5, I think at that point. So you put that right in there. So now this is, do you guys see how like it's like a well-rounded conversation about the listing? We didn't leave anything off the table, but we also didn't talk about anything super unnecessary, which I know we can all do. We go off on these tangents in there and it's like, you guys know me, I can go off on a tangent on anything. Any questions on here? Any questions about why I left the comments? Any other comments you guys would have left or you want to ask me, should I leave this? Feel good? Okay. So this is basically how I would go through it. So I'd leave that on pretty much all of them. You'll see like on this one, I had a little bit more to say, but they're very short one-liners. So I don't need to go in. It's like, seriously, speaker notes is the best way I could go through and say this. That's kind of what I would do. I mean, you guys know it's like each house I could go through and bore you guys with the details, but that's what I would do. Go through this, leave the comments. It's also going to educate yourself. If you have a house in there, like let's say, which one did I go and say? Doesn't really matter. You could take whatever you want. Let's just take Autumn Ridge, for example. This is an example of something that 9 Pamela, the subject property, did not have a flat lot. It had like a bunch of rocks kind of right up in the backyard. That was a handicap of the house, and it was for why we were staying on the market for a while. So I would go up in advance and I would say all the same things, pretend I just left all the same comments I did before. Note, flat, what was this? I think an acre, 2 acres, flat 2 acre lot. This is northern Westchester, so we have acres and acres. That's why I'm like, just an extra acre. It doesn't really make a difference. Depends on your area, obviously. Flat 2 acre lot. That's it. I don't need to tell them that their house is horrible in the comments. It's just, let's just be honest here. I'm very black and white in these things. It's just, this is on a flat lot. When we're sitting at the dining room table staring at their backyard that goes up like this, it's a different house. It's just a different lot. So you have to keep that in mind, that if we were trying to price that one at $1,099,000, this one was $1,075,000, just to keep that in mind. Then you'd go through the house. It's a little bit more outdated than 9 Pamela. So I would say that. So you can kind of go like a little bit back and forth, leave a few compliments, leave a few, harder hitting things in there that you need to talk about to discuss. But at least if you're leaving them in here, to me, I don't feel like it ever gets combative. It's just, these are just facts about the property. If you have market data, like if you went in and showed this, you could say, showed this to a buyer a few weeks ago, loved the lot, but needed too much work for them. That's it. Now it says like, okay, good. I feel better. You've been in it. You have some market, you've like some market knowledge of yourself actually being in there. So you can also start to compliment yourself. It's basically like you're pitching. To me, when I go through comps, that's the pitch. The rest of it, like when we all talk about our marketing and all that kind of stuff, that's not really like what I care so much about. I always find the client is yes, 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 yes. Talk about the numbers. So you have to rehearse talking about the numbers in a way that makes sense to you. I love numbers and I'm actually really, really, really good at explaining them. And I always have been, but I did not always do a good job explaining them in the pitch. So a lot of us are really good at it. You just have to get comfortable sharing the information in a different way and doing it in a way where like you can go and rehearse this before you get into the pitch. Then when you get in there, this is like what I call listing presentation. How does your property compare to the others? Being able to say that with confidence, not ending each of these statements with like a, that like little, you go up at the end, sounds like a question, sounds like you're unsure about the price of their house. This keeps you very confident, very collected, and you're talking about what you came in there to talk about. You didn't end up on something else. It also allows you to kind of group back in the seller. If the seller's going off on something saying, oh guys, we got to get through another 8 properties, let's get back to the next one. I understand that this maybe you don't feel is super comparable to your house. Great. Let's move on from Autumn Ridge. Let's move on to Bowway. And that's how I would do that. Like just continue to pivot the conversation. You can ask them questions like going through the house. Yeah, guys, like it's interesting. Like I had buyers through here, but they said it needed like a lot of updating. Let's take a look at it. I honestly don't remember the house right now. Yeah, it did need a lot of updating. Like master bath is nice, but the rest of your house is so much better. And then I'd like wait, continue to click. Oh my God, but they had a great lot, and then you sit there and you kind of talk like that. And then they're like, yeah, it's a great lot. And then you look at their backyard and they're like, it's not a great lot, but it's an updated house. So let's find a price that would match for that. If you were a buyer looking at both of these houses, they went to Autumn and they went to yours, how would you feel you wanted to price the house? It's not combative. You're just going through this, but you have all these pictures to go through. One more point on that CMA. I don't want to keep you guys for super long, but you only get like a certain amount of pictures. There's no really like interactive part of it. Yes, I know if you share the digital CMA one, there is, but a lot of people, I'm telling you, people tell me they do the digital CMA and they always print it and that's what they go through. So I know that people don't go through this digital CMA very often. This allows you to flow through the pictures. If they ask you on here, oh, what were the taxes? You're not going through size 6 font to say, oh shoot, like, hold on, sorry, what were they? And then you get flustered. Right here, taxes, age, agent to agent remarks. You can go zoom out on here. You can see if there's wetlands in the back. You can do all of that right as you're on the pitch. It allows you to answer all these questions in real time instead of having to say, oh, I'll get back to you with that. I'll get back to you with that. Let's not sign the listing agreement today because we couldn't agree on a price. What questions would somebody have afterwards that you can't answer when you have all this up right in front of you on the pitch? That's where I like to go with this. So I kind of want to like leave it there for today, and then we can always touch back on this, even if it's just for like 10 minutes at the beginning of next week's session. But how do you guys feel on this? Do you feel like confident that you can at least start to practice it? I have like 3 heads nodding. Yes. Do I feel excited? Okay, good. That's much better. Any questions I can answer right now on it? Does anybody have like a fear really of like doing this, and be super honest with it?
Can you hear me?
I heard someone just say,
This is Cynthia. I don't have my video on.
Okay.
So it's interesting. I have a client right now that I'm pitching to, and she created her own CMA because it's a condo and the building doesn't have a lot of like buildings.
mhm.
So like I have to go back now and say to her, it's apples to oranges. It's a different location. It's a different type building.
Right.
So, how would you, I mean, it's interesting that someone would do that on their own. So you would, I guess maybe if I present it to her this way, she'll see how much difference there is.
Yeah. And I think like that's really it. Like we could get so combative with these people sometimes. And like some people
Yeah.
ask us this stuff and you're like, I'm sorry, what is going on here? I had someone else do this to me this morning. Oh, someone put this thing in a collection for me. It's like a 1-3 house in like a $600,000 area. And I'm like, there are no comps to support this. Like I would not put my money here if I were you. And then they were like, oh no, I found a comp for 1.7. I'm like, this isn't a completely different like town, zip code, everything. Like, how are you comparing these things? So it is hard when they try to like be the advisor for themselves, but you just have to regroup them back. I think a collection is a great way to do that. Again, because you're leaving comments, you don't have to get combative in there. They can be quick one-liners. And the proof is in the pudding right there, and go through it with her. Most of the time, like these people just don't know. So if you explain it to them in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid or like, why don't they know that or whatever, like I have heard agents do this before, and I've gotten the listing 10 times over because of how they spoke to the client in there. Your approach is everything. So just saying like, really appreciate what you sent over. Do you mind if we just maybe make a meeting to sit down? Let's go through this together. I really want to see where your head's at, so I can help kind of understand. And then if she has a comp that she thinks is amazing, say, great, talk me through why you think that's a great comp.
Yeah.
She's
She's also, for whatever reason, trying to, I mean, this is the condo situation, but she wants to keep, she has 2 units in the building and she doesn't want the price per square foot to drop low. But it's unrealistic. So it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All you can do is give people the information. You can't force them to do anything.
No,
you can't
I
make
can't.
them. And a lot of the
Right.
times they do see it. We all know this, but this is your best bet, is what I would say.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Let me just check the chat really quick, and then I'll let you guys go. Sorry. If anyone needs to hop off, just go for it.
Hey, Kate, one quick
yeah.
question. So you set up this collection for yourself to prepare the CMA. If you, after the meeting, were to put their address in, would they start seeing everything new that matched the CMA search, or do you do a new collection?
No, good question. And that's what I was going to go through a little bit next week, just so I don't keep you guys for too long. I'll show you, like, after, let's say I win the pitch, I'm going to show you how I go through and walk them through it and how I kind of keep them on this. But essentially this does become their collection they hold on to way until like they close. Some people are weird and they even like want to keep seeing it. I'm like, you're moving far, far away, but sure, if you want to see how the neighborhood's moving. So this becomes that, and no, they don't automatically get it because at the beginning, you set it up that it's review and hand pick. So you're making a time block every day or once a week, whatever it is, to go through and make sure that the right one, the right listings that you've approved have now been front facing to the client. So they won't see any of that unshared. What the client sees when they go in, that same exact thing as if you were doing this with a buyer, they're only seeing what you've shared. Everything else is hidden from them.
Great, thanks.
All right. Let me see what Ryan's saying. No fear, just want to know how to incorporate the marketing advantage with Compass and how to best incorporate both. So like talking, like how to like pitch marketing on a listing. Is that what it is, Ryan? Okay. We can talk about that at like another time, probably not at like 12:35. I really don't want to keep you guys here for too long, but we can definitely talk about that and like how to best approach that, how I share that. Maybe we can have like a little bit of a mastermind session of like how you guys have all shared it and maybe learn from each other, because I find something new from one of my clients every single day. I'm like, oh, I love that. And I'm like supposed to be the tech expert, but I think that might be like a good breather. So you don't have to hear me talk every single week. Say, okay, we're good with her. Mute yourself. You guys can all kind of talk. So I'll set that up for maybe a couple of weeks from now. All right. So what I want you guys to do, for anybody that's still on, practice this week, make some mock collections, make one for a listing you already have. You don't necessarily need to just share it and make any of these things front facing to the client yet, but talk to anybody in here, pick somebody from CSC, get an accountability partner, practice role playing this. If you don't want to do it with someone, just do it out loud and practice getting through these collections and how to be sharing the comps in a better way. All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for staying late with me. And
Thank
any
you.
questions, email me and I can answer them on this, or maybe like see how it's going this week. And we can take 10 minutes of the next call so I can answer any questions. Some of you guys can share your experience, any hiccups you had, and we could do that at the beginning of the next call. All right. Okay. Bye guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.